The IMF is on the verge of agreeing further financial aid to war-torn Ukraine. How important is this package, and what should it look like? With me to discuss this is Martin Wolf, Chief Economic Commentator at the Financial Times. Martin, so how important is this package for Ukraine's finances?
Well, it's clear that Ukraine itself is in a dreadful economic straits. It was a very poorly performing economy before the war started, and things have obviously got massively worse. The economy has contracted by about 8% in just 3 quarters. They have lost regions which contribute more than 1/6 of total GDP and revenue, and much more of that of manufacturing. The exchange rate is collapsing. It's almost impossible to describe how much because it's so immediate. So it's continuing, and foreign currency reserves have collapsed now to a little bit more than $6 billion at the beginning of this year, which is not any sort of cushion. And of course, there's capital flight because people are terrified about the underlying stability. So that's the plight, and beyond that, the economy needs to be stabilized, of course, and it needs comprehensive and massive reform on the assumption that Ukraine is and should be a functioning economic system. All the failings of past administrations in terms of corruption, in terms of the energy system, in terms of the way the economy is allowed to operate, that has to change. It's no longer viable. So the program has to achieve stabilization and reform.
So what should a program look like, in your opinion? How big should it be, and what conditionality should be imposed on it?
It's to some degree, it's quite difficult to know how big it should be because the potential for capital flight is so large, and so you sort of have to judge that, and also you have to judge how much you should reasonably expect other creditors, private creditors, and of course Russia to contribute. And I think it's reasonable to think that the private creditors and Russia certainly should contribute. Certainly Russia should, since it's done so much to cause this problem. So it can't all be the West. And as I said, it's really quite difficult to work out. There are some informed guesses that or estimates that I've read, among others by Anders Aslund, who works at the Peterson Institute in Washington, that it needs about $27 billion this year. That sounds sort of right to me, but I think it just needs to be enough to give a big increase in reserves and sufficient indication that Ukraine is going to be supported to prevent a total collapse of the currency, a huge upsurge in inflation and so forth. So that is the core of it. The fiscal position, actually, surprisingly, is apparently not too bad. Now, so that's the sort of how big it has to be. Now, the crucial thing is the reform side. Central reforms are the elimination of energy subsidies and the equalization of energy prices at market levels. It's absolutely essential. There's some very big and important steps in terms of anti-corruption throughout the whole administrative system. There's some very important financial sector reforms. The financial sector has really been looted through connected lending. This has become a very oligopolistic system. Those oligopolies, to some degree, are going to have to, in my view, have to be broken up. So it's a fundamental structural reform is needed as well. Now, you would say that's impossible in a war, and I can see that. But the argument on the other side is this is a country that's back against the wall. If it doesn't change the way it does things, it's just not going to survive at all. It's a matter of national survival.
And finally, Martin, obviously the package is only one part of what the West needs to do to solve the crisis, or do its. What else would you advocate? How could the West get Russia to stop its helping to destabilize the region?
This seems to me the point about the package and the economic support is the one thing we should all be able to agree on, because it's clear not only is it good in itself, but it might indicate to the Russians that we're just not going to allow Ukraine to collapse. Now, then there are two really huge there's a huge question: can we get Russia to agree to some sort of stability, which means stopping the support for the civil war? Clearly, the Russians are playing a very big role in this, and reopening normal relations with Ukraine.
Well, Martin, thank you very much.
Pleasure.